Heather saying that she's got COVID, so no video or mic for her. That's okay, Heather. We miss you. Hope you're feeling better soon. Emmett, if you'd like to go up next and introduce yourself.
Sure. And I might have a couple of my team join in today too, to hear them
Oh,
about other
great.
things going on. So,
Exciting.
Emmett Nance, co-founder and visionary behind Inventory Ally. So it's an inventory replenishment optimization tool. And we won the pitch competition at VIS as well as VMX this last few months, and just got back from WVC last night, where that's also a lot of good conversations happening there. I see Sophia just joined. She's our director of customer success. So.
Oh, very nice. Okay, then we can, yeah, let's go to Sophia if you want to introduce yourself, Sophia.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sophia Bykowski. I'm the Director of Customer Success here at Inventory Ally. I've been in the cold fields as a veterinary technician here in Northern Ontario, where I then joined the Smartphone team with Emmett, knowing him way back then, and then just continued through in the veterinary space, really focusing on customer success and support through various startups, and now back with Emmett with Inventory Ally, achieving the goals of the clinics and our customers, and making sure that we're here to support them. So thank you so very much for having us.
Of course.
Great.
Nice to
Congrats
meet
on
you.
your guys' recent, traction and successes. It's really neat to see.
Thanks, Sarah. I appreciate that.
Marlene, if you want to introduce yourself, the mic is yours.
Oh, hey, I'm a practitioner and was very curious about what you guys have to offer. And are you going to record? I mean, I know you're recording it. I got that, but will we get a replay of this?
Yeah, I'm about to put the link in the chat if you all want to find replays for our monthly webinars. It's at celeritasdigital.com/webinars. I'll put that link in the chat now.
Okay.
And you can find that. Should be up by tomorrow, if not Monday the latest, and then we send out a post-webinar flyer as well. Thank you for the question. And yeah, anyone else who wants to, Ryan, if you want to introduce yourself as well.
Absolutely. My name is Ryan Tennyson. I am the Director of Partnerships at Vetcelerator. In fact, I actually used to work with Dr. Ira Gordon for a very short amount of time. And I'm here today really just to learn where the industry is continuing to head. I've worked in software within the vet industry for about 10 years now. And I always like to kind of see where we're heading. I think there's some really exciting things happening in the industry. So thank you for having me.
Glad you're here.
Great. And we have Shahir, who is a coworker of mine working at Celeritas Digital, who's helped organize this. So a big thank you to Shahir.
Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. So hello, everyone. How are you?
Great. We have Scott Moffitt. If you want to introduce yourself, Scott.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Scott Moffitt. I'm retired from the industry, the veterinary industry, but now doing some consulting and colleagues with IRA as a member of Veterinary Angel Network for Entrepreneurs.
Great. Nice to meet you, Scott. And finally, we have Kristen Lake. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. I'm Kristen Lake. I am a veterinary entrepreneur and philanthropist. I am the executive director of Animal Emergency Fund, as well as the founder of VetMed Math, Stat Math, VetMed Rounds, co-founder of Vetmedology, and author of the Veterinary Technician's Guide to Emergency and Critical Care. And I'm always interested to learn about new innovations in the veterinary field.
Well, you came to the right place. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
That's quite the bio. I think you need to write some more books and found some more companies, Kristen.
I know, right? I'm up to four for-profit companies, one nonprofit. So
Where the rest of us are slackers.
This is, yeah, we have a great crew here today, but I want to first off just introduce our facilitator for this conversation today, Dr. Ira Gordon, who has 15 plus years in the veterinary and animal health industry. Dr. Ira Gordon has served the field as veterinary radiation oncologist since 2007. He's a researcher for the National Cancer Institute and an entrepreneur who is the co-founder of the Veterinary Angel Network, Vet Prep, Viral Vet, Vet Tech Prep. He's currently the scientific advisory board member at Jenga Biosciences. And with that, I would love to pass the mic over to Dr. Ira Gordon.
Thank you very much. I was not expecting such a accomplished and entrepreneurial group here, so it's really exciting to have you all here, and I'm looking forward to this discussion. The title of my talk is 5, and I added +2 new technology companies that vet clinics should know about. The +2 is a couple of things that are not really veterinary, but I just think they're super interesting, and wanted to share mine and hear your thoughts about them. Well, I appreciate the bio just shared by Daniel, but I will briefly just add that my sense of these things is informed by my time doing a lot of different things. I spent a little bit of time as an instructor in academia at UC Davis. I've been started a practice from scratch, which turned into a group of oncology specialty practices. I've worked for a large corporate group at Ethos, where I was a medical director and their director of innovation. Daniel mentioned my time. I spent about 5 years as a research fellow at the National Cancer Institute. Started a startup from scratch, which was Vet Prep, and then Vet Tech Prep as education technology companies. Then worked at a bigger startup in an executive role at Vetcelerator, which is a company that provides support and help to a variety of veterinary practices. And then I'm the co-founder of this group called the Veterinary Angel Network, or VANE, which provides direction, connection, and funding to startup companies in the animal health space. Related to that, I thought it was appropriate to just kind of share a broad disclosure related to my activities at VANE. I think all of the companies I'm talking about today, I've come into contact with probably because of my affiliation with VANE, and done at least one of the 3 things that VANE tries to do for companies, which is provide direction, connection, and/or funding. And so, although what I'm sharing is because of my genuine enthusiasm and interest in what these companies are doing, you should not consider anything that I'm saying here to be independent or unbiased. And in many cases, I have some probably financial incentive to see some of these companies do well also. So I just wanted to be transparent about that. So we'll be talking about some cool things today. I have a list here, but we'll just kind of go through them incrementally. And feel free to interrupt me along the way, but I'll try to make sure to pause as we transition from each product to the next to see what discussion there might be. The first 2 companies I'm going to talk about are the ones that I would say they're not really veterinary, but they're sort of veterinary adjacent, and I think they're really cool and interesting for a variety of reasons. The first is Sylvester AI and their product, which is called Tably, which does facial expression analysis for cats. And when I think about AI and things like interpreting facial expressions, I'm reminded of things a few years ago, like AI being unable to tell the difference between a Chihuahua and a blueberry muffin. And I don't know how many of you have young kids, but there's this movie called The Mitchell versus the Machines on Netflix, where the machines are trying to take over the world, as AI always seems to result in. And one of the ways they defeat them is they've got this adorable, kind of funny looking pug, and the robots look at him and they try to figure out whether he's a pig, a dog, or a loaf of bread, and it just overwhelms their processors, and they totally shut down. But AI has come a long way since then, and can potentially do some pretty cool things. And the way that Tably with Sylvester works is that you take a picture or a video of a cat, and the end result of its analysis is that it will tell you whether your cat is happy or if it is in discomfort for one reason or another. It doesn't tell you the reason. That's probably version 3.6, but at version 1.0, it gives you a readout of whether your cat is comfortable and happy or uncomfortable. And the way that it does this is it actually looks at a number of facial cues. It's largely based on the feline grimace scale, which is a validated way to look at sort of cat facial expressions to assess these types of things. So it looks at eye position or orbital tightening. Are they squinty? What's the ear position? Are they up down? How are the whiskers sitting? Is there tension in the muzzle? And what's the overall head position of a cat? And it does that all through automation and artificial intelligence, ultimately giving this readout of does your cat seem happy or does your cat seem unhappy? This came from Sylvester, just sort of a variety of just sort of anecdotal stories about ways people have used this. Probably the most compelling story I heard actually came from a vet that had a patient and client that had a diabetic cat, and it would take pictures of its cat every day. And he was really struck by the correlation between the readouts from the cat's facial assessment and its diabetic control. When its diabetes was not well controlled, the cat looked unhappy, and it was well controlled, it looked happy. And I thought, as far as anecdotes go, that's a pretty good one. And I see a question in the chat from Kristen about whether this is based on the feline grimace scale. And the answer to that is yes. I don't know that it's strictly based on that, but I think it's informed by that significantly. And so people are using this, and I don't think veterinarians are using it. I know, speaking to the founder, she said this actually doesn't seem to work that great in veterinary clinics when people take pictures of cats, because almost all cats in veterinary clinics look like they're unhappy for some reason. And so that probably makes sense and probably speaks well about the technology itself. But for that reason, and maybe some others, it's not really sort of at the point that it's a veterinary tool, but I think it's something that pet owners are using. We're likely to sort of get questions about, and hopefully soon we'll start to see some more studies that actually provide some validation for what this is really telling us, how accurate it is, and what things it might correlate to. So yeah, I'd be certainly curious to know if anybody has had any experience with clients or sort of use of a product like this, or any discussion around the way that something like this could either currently or maybe in the future impact veterinary practice.
I hope more people start to use it, because I know we had some conversation around, I think Sylvester AI in particular, on one of our webinars, and I was instantly hooked. So I downloaded it right away and was testing it out on my cats. And there's like varying degrees of accuracy with it, but I just hope people keep using it and they keep updating it, because I think it could be a really powerful tool.
Agreed.
Seeing some comments too.
Marlene commented on having a little bit of experience with it, and a great comment from Kristen about potentially having technicians use it along with other pain scales as sort of support for doing so, which makes a ton of sense, of course. All right, I'll move on to the next one, which is also not really veterinary. Company called Parting Stone, which for some reason I feel very personally connected to. And at least I'm really connected to the problem. The vast majority of all the pets I ever saw when they died were cremated. And there's this really weird question to me about what are people supposed to do with ashes? Like they're kind of ugly. Like you worry that they're gonna blow away or get on stuff. I don't know how many Lebowski fans we have in here, but this picture is their good friend Donnie passed away, and they go to pick up his ashes, and they know they want to scatter them, and they're broke, so they don't want to pay for an urn, and so they end up getting a can of coffee to transport his ashes in, and then when they go to scatter them at the beach, like the wind kicks up and Donnie ends up all over the dude. And I mean, it's tragic, and of course, only funny if it's happening to these people. But I think the problem is pretty real. When my last dog, Jezebel, who was my faithful companion from my early 20s in vet school till my mid 30s, when I was married with kids, when she died, I got her ashes back in a box and just had no idea what to do with it. It sort of sat in the corner of my office for a long time, and it got hidden under other stuff and was not really a source of any comfort to me. And so when I learned about this company, I actually had her turned into what my dad calls pet rocks, which I think is really funny. And so I actually have her here. She's sits in this little vase. I don't know if you guys can see it, and they're really cool. They're nice, they're soft. My son is actually weirdly, coincidentally, in the last week, he's kind of gotten really sad about Jezebel's passing, even though it was 5 years ago. And it's just something he can hold on to, and it's tangible, and it's been really nice. I guess from what I understand, every different individual kind of forms a little bit of a different type of rock, which is kind of unique as well. And I just kind of think it's different. For some reason, so this is a product that's for people as well. For some reason, it makes a ton more sense to me for pets than for people. Like I couldn't really put into words why I think that is. But that is, something it's available. They have a really great what I would call sort of client experience sort of set up for people, where kind of the death process includes funeral homes. And I think there's still a little bit of innovation to be done on how to make that process seamless for veterinary clinics, and the way that we tend to handle pets and their disposal and remains, to get these to people without you know any additional sort of effort. But I think for the right people, definitely it's worth it. And actually, the founder of the company wanted me to use this slide background. That's actually his dog. So I told him I would. I'm not sure if that's there's a lot of sort of discussion about this, but I just think it was cool. Wanted to talk about it and see if other people have, feelings about it.
So I posted in the chat, but do you know, are they talking to hospitals at all about, like, when I'm selecting my group or private cremation, can I have this as an add-on? Like, or is this purely people finding this by themselves on the internet?
Great question. And it's for human remains, it's almost all done like at that sort of funeral home with the funeral director. And then for pets, though, it's almost all done with, just as you said, sort of a pet owner deciding they want this, and then sending the ashes to this company to have them sort of turned into these stones. And I think for them to kind of take that next step, kind of having that be just a one-step process for people is going to be necessary. And I know that that's something they're thinking about. And I suspect they'll get to.
Do you know what the process is that actually, like, they have to add something to it, or
They do add, so yes, I will. No, the real answer is no. I don't know the process, but they do add something to the ashes to sort of solidify them, and I understand that it takes sort of a number of hours for them to kind of harden into and form these stones. But the thing that makes this different than a lot of other what I would call keepsakes that people can create from ashes, like you can create a diamond from ashes, you can create, like, I think you can plant a tree with ashes somehow, but this actually, like, this is all of the remains, right? Like, this is not you're taking some of their ashes and making a diamond. Like, this is taking all of their remains and sort of turning them into a set of stones. And my dog, she was about a 45-pound dog. Looks like I probably have just under 20 stones, but I guess it can be anywhere from 10 to 50 or so. And so that's one of the things that makes it a little bit different. Yeah, but I could get you more info about the process if you're interested, but that's probably the extent of what I know.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, happy to. All right, let's move on. So the next one I really want to get everybody's thoughts about, and not necessarily specifically this one product, but sort of the broader space of kind of next generation online pharmacy platforms for veterinary clinics. I only know a little bit about it, but I've had some really interesting talks with the founder of Blue Rabbit about this. Blue Rabbit recently merged with Wedgwood Compounding Pharmacy, which is very interesting as well. But I want to talk about the problem first. Emmett and the crew from Inventory Ally, the first piece of this very, very well, which is that it's really challenging to manage veterinary inventory and veterinary pharmacies, and especially as increasingly people are not getting most of their drugs from veterinary pharmacies. We have problems of ordering things that you don't end up dispensing, that expire, and need to deal with that. The other really big piece is how much ground veterinary clinics have lost to major online retailers. And I get this as a consumer. Like, I really love the experience of these large online marketplaces, and they make it really easy to shop, and they oftentimes have things that are less expensive than you might find in other places. And I think, unfortunately, at least until really recently, while vet clinics have had online pharmacy options, like, they really haven't been that competitive with those other retailers in terms of the price that your clients can buy stuff for, or kind of the overall experience that that clients can have with sort of those those places. And when I was talking to Ben, the founder of Blue Rabbit, he told me some things that, initially I was like, I'm not sure how much I can believe all of this, right? He's like, would you believe me if I told you that, a successful transition to an online pharmacy could do all three of these things? It could improve client compliance with your medical recommendations and reorder rates by 2 to 3x. I think I could probably believe that. It could lower the cost to your clients for what they're paying for what you're prescribing, and even in compared to sort of those large retailers, and that it could provide clinics with a higher net profit from their sales of things like medications and food that they're prescribing compared to when they were filling those things in-house. So that seems like a combination of three things that feels hard to do. So I was initially sort of skeptical of that, but I want to tell you about sort of what they're doing, and see what questions you have or what you believe. So the simple explanation of what Blue Rabbit is, I think, is sort of a combination of three things. They have a veterinary sort of facing software for writing prescriptions and turning those into orders. I believe that integrates with a number of practice management systems. They have a pretty well designed and well built sort of client storefront for people to be able to order things and to turn those into prescriptions when needed. And then of course they have the pharmacy and customer service and back end of all that. I think the part of the case for how this can all work is this notion that when you have a really high quality online store, like, people are going to be much more likely to shop there when they get prompts and emails to say, hey, it's time to refill it, just click here and this is the place that you want to get it. Like, people are going to do that much more frequently than they're going to call your clinic, drive down to your clinic, buy what they need and get it back home. So I think that all makes sense. So those being sort of the potential benefits for clients. They also can integrate with some of the clinical testing needs that frequently go along with ordering. So you can, from what I understand, sort of input that you can kind of attach the need for recheck blood work or a heartworm test before specific medications are refilled, so that they'll send those clients back into the clinic when they need to have clinical work done in order to have a prescription be filled. And then the piece that is going to be extremely important, but is a little bit hard to wrap my head around, is that they're going to generate a 15 to 30% net profit from pharmacy and food, which is potentially higher than what a lot of clinics may see when they're doing these things in-house these days. My sense is, I mean, this is just one of my favorite quotes from any movie ever, and probably not a lot of Clerks fans in the world, but I modified it because it's a little bit inappropriate in its original form. But this business would be easy if it wasn't for the customers. And so ultimately, like, it doesn't matter how good your online pharmacy is, if they'd rather order from someplace else because it's cheaper and easier, that's what they're going to do. And so one of the key sort of value propositions of Blue Rabbit is they actually expect to be cheaper than those other alternatives. And so I have this list of kind of key considerations for clinics to think about when choosing a pharmacy partner. And I think that issue of the total cost to a client is a big deal. And one of the things that I was learning about when speaking to the founder about this was it's actually more complicated than you might think, because there's kind of the retail price of what you're selling. Some places will sort of depress that, but then they make up for it with things like credit card fees or shipping fees or a fulfillment or dispensing fee that kind of all just kind of gets tacked on, and sort of looking at that grand total is really what you need to look at, and making sure that none of those costs are being passed on to the clinic either, right? If you're paying for it, that's worse. And ultimately, you can't win if you're going to be more expensive than what somebody can find with a quick online search. And then on the team side, I thought this was interesting too. You said that it's usually pretty easy to get owners and practice managers kind of bought in on something like this, but really important to get front desk staff kind of trained and in the swing of talking to clients about how this all works, and sort of the value proposition there. Interestingly, he said oftentimes there's some initial pushback from leads at practices that are in charge of things like inventory, because they worry that if we're moving a lot of in-house pharmacy to a online pharmacy, that could be a threat to their job, but it probably isn't. There's still lots of inventory to be managed. And then the big one that makes sense to me is the ones that are always the biggest pain, which is the doctors, because lots of doctors are actually compensated on production in part based on the medications that they're selling and dispensing. And so if you are giving them something you want them to use that's actually a financial disincentive for them to use, they are probably not going to be jumping on board to use it. And so it may require actually revisiting how you're thinking about compensation, and potentially if you are currently compensating doctors for a percentage of the cost of medications that they're selling in-house, that you may need to kind of translate that somehow into compensation on the revenue that your clinic's generating from the online pharmacy as well. So I thought those were interesting things, and insights about kind of making these transitions successfully. So yeah, I guess really curious to hear from this group about your experiences, if not with this specific kind of online pharmacy, just sort of the space generally, and kind of the opportunity, and whether you think that sort of that best of all worlds is sort of a believable outcome.
Yeah, I'd love to just offer a thought on that, because I very much agree with all of this, because there's a huge opportunity to kind of increase the scope of your offering when you complement it with an online pharmacy. And one of the things that we tend to really recommend consistently from Inventory Ally is identify your slow moving products and move those towards online pharmacy. Increase some of the space, increase the capacity, decrease the effort, especially around the inventory manager, of trying to manage a bunch of stuff that's kind of one-off. So great opportunity there. Completely agree with the idea of increased compliance. Like if you make it easy, you send it to them, you auto ship it, yeah, you're going to generate more revenue, but it's also better patient care as well, because you're going to increase that compliance. Lower cost, very much so. Not sure I get the third bullet, that you're going to increase your profit on those. It should be wrong. And that's, I think, why you struggle with it, because we should be able to charge more in clinic for the convenience and the cost of storing it. But most oftentimes we don't. We try to be competitive with online. And therefore, I do think that bullet point probably is accurate, but shouldn't be.
Good point. One of the things that he shared with me is that this information about increased reorder rates is really not a secret, and all of the major manufacturers know this, and that they actually, part of the way they make this work is they provide some pretty significant incentives in terms of what they charge for their products for moving people to an online pharmacy with kind of a simplified reorder process. And so that's a big piece of the way that they can kind of both drive down price while still paying the clinics a good share.
Yeah, volume price trade-off is always that balancing act, so makes a ton of sense.
So how do they monitor to make sure that your client is being credited and monitored and your profits are coming back? And that's a nightmare.
It could be. I think I don't have the answer for sort of exactly how that information is monitored and shared. I would guess that that they generate reports on all of these orders, and I'm sure they do a good job of kind of tracking what the pricing on these items is compared to competitors. But certainly something that I think clinicians and practice managers don't want to have to try to stay on top of all the time. They can sort of audit periodically, but that's probably the extent of what you want to be doing. So you need to be able to trust that they're doing their job too.
I've just had a lot of affiliate programs where they just go south. People get started and then the tracking links get broken or they get changed, and then you are no longer credited, or it just always seems to be a major issue, and I've never seen one ultimately be successful.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think this is potentially sort of a bigger switch than a typical sort of affiliate program or sort of incentive or rebate. I think especially because of their new relationship with Wedgwood, like they have relationships with all the manufacturers, so like your generics, your name brand drugs, your food, and all your compounding drugs sort of all going into sort of one place is like, it's a pretty big switch, and it certainly does require paying close attention to how that's all going.
Can I just offer one piece to that too? It's certainly a valid concern, and we've all kind of experienced some of those glitches and stuff. But I always try to encourage too, like, keep in mind the bigger opportunity, and so there's going to be rewards associated with that. There may be some glitches to work through sometimes, but it oftentimes is worth kind of still trying to work through those things because in aggregate, the benefit is much larger. I'll also offer that the founder and the team behind Blue Rabbit is very experienced in a number of different similar kind of creations in the past. So they probably worked through a lot of those bugs. I think there's probably some confidence associated with this team at Blue Rabbit as well to maybe consider.
Thanks. I'll just add that, they did mention that this is not a complete replacement for an in-house pharmacy. I think their hope would be that it's probably replaces, this is me making this up, not coming from them, but maybe 80% or more of your pharmacy. I think you're still going to need, drugs for in-house use. You're still going to need drugs to send people home for initial doses before they can get something by mail. But, do you need to be carrying, 6 different brands of a bunch of different weights of every, parasiticide? Probably not, right? And so I think there's some interesting opportunity, but it's not likely to sort of completely replace the need to carry any drugs at most practices. All right. Well, thanks. That was good to hear from you guys about. All right. So I have an oncology one since I'm an oncologist. Thought that seemed appropriate. I want to talk to you about HT Vista and their product HT Vet, which is a heat diffusion imaging technology for doing non-invasive cancer screening. Which I think is pretty neat. I am a little bit worried that I might lose my oncology card for what I'm about to say. But I don't really love aspirating things, right? So I guess that's not entirely true. I do like aspirating lymph nodes and I do like looking at a good cytology slide, but yeah, it's a little unrewarding often, right? I remember back when I was an intern, I actually had to suture an aspirate that I did of a subcutaneous hemangiosarcoma that just wouldn't stop bleeding. And I've certainly had a handful of mast cell tumors that are just kind of blown up in front of my eyes after aspirating them, and certainly countless non-diagnostic and or sort of misleading aspirates over my time. But for the most part, that's our best non-invasive test for lumps and bumps, despite all of those limitations. And so that's what HT Vet is hoping to solve with this sort of lightsaber-like technology of theirs. The way that it works is you have to clip the hair over the side of a lump, and then with this light imager, you scan it and mark sort of the area of concern versus normal tissue, and then it analyzes it in just a few minutes and returns you a result. The idea is that it essentially heats up this tissue, and benign tissues like lipomas and inclusion cysts and things like that very funny, Kristen, that those types of tissues are going to cool down much more slower than healthy tissue because they're not really vascular and the like. Whereas malignant tissues actually cool down faster than the healthy tissue. And so I'm not sure how well you can see these little curves, but when you see that the tumor tissue in the lower left, which is a lipoma, is cooling down much more slowly than the blue healthy tissue, and the opposite is true of the mast cell tumor. So I think that's pretty neat. Then essentially what they generate is a score that represents a chance of that lump or bump being benign. And the data that they have so far would suggest that they have a pretty good, very good overall sort of negative predictive value. But when things are sort of falling more into that potentially concerning category, there's a bigger mix of sort of benign and malignant things. And I think that's done intentionally. I think they want to be able to say, if you're scanning 20 lumps and bumps, here's 18 that you really don't need to worry about. Here's 2 that you might want to do more work on. And I see that Andy Flores joined us. Hi, Andy. And I think that approach probably overlaps a little bit with the approach that Andy's company PetDX has taken when it comes to diagnostics, which is sort of wanting to make sure that you can trust a negative result, and you're going to have to do a little more work if a positive result comes back. Any discussion or questions about this technology?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing I think about is you said aspirates are unrewarding, and I 100% agree that aspirates are unrewarding, but I've been seeing recently some growth in the field of you don't have to look at your own aspirate. You can smear it on a slide, and then you can either put it into this machine that you can buy from us and we'll read the aspirate for you, or you can just put it into this machine and it will automatically send it to a veterinary pathologist and they'll read the aspirate for you. So I guess it's do I heat ray my lump, or do I do an aspirate and then have someone much smarter than me look at my aspirate? And I wonder your take on that decision.
Yeah, I think all of the above, right? I think that there are challenging aspects to look at that you definitely will want to get a pathologist's opinion on. Even oncologists need to do that with some frequency, right? But the bigger problem is, do you really have a representative sample on that slide of the cells that make up the process that you're aspirating?
Right, that's
And
my question. Right, it doesn't matter.
sometimes that's easy, right? Like, and that's why I said I love aspirating lymph nodes. Like, you usually can feel when you're getting a good sample from a lymph node. And if you look at it in a micro, you can certainly tell, like, did I get a good sample, a cellular sample, and is this lymph node? For things like mast cell tumors, like you usually get pretty good samples. I would say, even a moderately decent cytology veterinarian probably doesn't always need a pathologist to tell them what a mast cell tumor is. But certainly there are lots of things that are more complicated, and I think things like soft tissue sarcomas, which I see a lot of as a radiation oncologist, frequently are kind of stubborn about exfoliating, and sometimes when you put them on a slide, like they just kind of look like you got a little bit of fatty stuff, right? And that's probably because you aspirated subcutaneous fat around that sarcoma, and that's all that exfoliated. And you could send that to the best pathologist in the world, and they're going to tell you they don't see anything malignant, right? And so I think it is probably more that type of specific problem that an instrument like this is maybe best suited to do a better job than. And I think there's still definitely a place for cytology. And I think it is a question I don't probably have a really clear answer to, of like, how does one determine like which lumps and bumps would be better for something like this versus better for something like that?
No, you did. No, you answered my question, and that's why because I knew you're an oncologist, and so that's what I was worried about, representative sample. But you talked about soft tissue sarcoma, some of these other things. That makes sense.
I had a golden retriever patient from a very wealthy owner that had come to see me. Had like 25 lumps and bumps, all were thought to be fatty tumors, but one was a soft tissue sarcoma that, even though it had been aspirated multiple times, they always thought was lipoma. I'm sure we've all had a story like that happen to us in our clinical careers. And came to me for radiation therapy. Like, dog did well, but the owner was always panicked about the dog having all these other lumps and bumps, and they'd been aspirated, and like, how are we sure, right, that this isn't another one like that? And ultimately, like, I got back into saying, I agree, aspirate not the best test. We could do a whole dog CT and determine with pretty high confidence whether these are fatty, because fat has a different density on CT than soft tissue. And sure enough, I did a $2,000 CT that we had to anesthetize this golden retriever for to diagnose a bunch of lipomas, right? It's a little embarrassing. And I think that if I had a tool like this, like, maybe I wouldn't have had to do that.
I have one more, then I'll turn it over to Kristen in the comments. And I'm not expecting you to know the answer to this, but how much does this cost for me to buy for my clinic? And then how much am I charging? Because I'm seeing FNA fees of $60 to do the FNA, and then $300 for me to send out the FNA. So I'm seeing FNAs for $400 now, and I'm like, oh my God, when I came out of school, an FNA was not $400. So is this like $20, $50? I'm just curious if you have an idea.
I believe that the fee is for the unit itself and not for sort of the individual test, although I'm not 100% sure about that, and I don't actually know the exact cost. I think the idea is that you can train a staff member to do this. It does not have to be a veterinarian's time doing the aspirate or reading the aspirate, which is a pretty nice benefit. And then, I believe that when we'd spoken to them, I think the idea was that this was supposed to be a two-figure test, right? Just for each lump and bump that you're scanning. And I don't remember if that was more of a $20 to $30 or $60 to $80 sort of number, but it was not hundreds of dollars number from what I recall.
Do you know how much this costs? Did you say and I missed it?
You asked and I said I was not sure. But
oh, you did. Okay, I was gonna say I can Google it. I'm just curious. All right, cool.
All right, should we jump ahead? Got a couple left. Next company I'm pretty excited about too, Gallant Therapeutics. So they are really trying to take an evidence-based approach to looking at cell-based and regenerative therapies. They have a long history of developing stem cells from animals, but they have developed a platform to generate and grow large numbers of stem cells from dog uterus, and believe that these stem cells will have utility in a variety of diseases, but the one they've made the most progress on is going to be feline gingival stomatitis, which I want to talk to you about. I think most of you know, like, this is a terrible problem, like a very painful condition. There's very little that that we have to offer as veterinarians that works great. I mean, aside from the extreme of whole mouth extractions, which also still doesn't always work, and things like anti-inflammatories and steroids often don't help or work for very long. And so it's just a major unmet need, which is why I'm thrilled that they're working on it. I even ended up treating a few cats with low dose radiation as a last ditch effort for this problem. And crazy enough, that actually does seem to work anecdotally, but only temporarily. And so it's not really a great viable, curative treatment for this problem either. And so they are coming along. This is a allogeneic stem cell, which means that they can actually have a product that can sit on a shelf and be given to animals, as opposed to having to generate stem cells from the patient for the treatment. They finished a pilot study of 21 cats. 78% of them had a response rate. You can see in the image on this slide a cat that had a pretty dramatic improvement in lesion score 4 months after its treatment. So that's pretty neat. They currently are enrolling 35 to 40 cats in their pivotal study that they call the JEDI study, which I swear I had nothing to do with the name, and I don't know if it stands for anything or what it stands for. But they believe they're on track to become the first FDA-approved cell therapy in the US in early next year. And I very much look forward to having an option for cats with this pretty terrible people. And then I think from there they'll be looking to similarly look at efficacy against those other conditions like arthritis, kidney disease, and the like. Any discussion around Gallant? I'll keep rolling. Yeah, some of these are a little bit more straightforward, so just good things to know about. Caravet Bio has developed a wound healing lick prevention gel or product. And so, as you know, skin disease is a big reason for vet visits. As a radiation oncologist, I've caused lots of skin reactions and work closely with owners to try to get them to heal. And one thing I've learned and now know, even though I don't actually understand it, is that owners absolutely love putting something topical on skin wounds. Like, you literally cannot stop them from doing it. Even when I knew there was evidence that most of the things they wanted to put on radiation sites didn't work, I could not stop them from putting stuff on radiation sites. That's actually how I first learned about Caravet, because they have a human counterpart called Carinetics, which has one of the few FDA-approved treatments for radiation dermatitis for breast cancer. Unfortunately, a lot of human over-the-counter products don't really work that well for a lot of the skin things that we see, and or they're going to be ingested by pets, which makes them ineffective or could potentially cause other harm. As you know, the most common way that veterinarians prevent self-trauma in animals is with Elizabethan collars. They are pretty effective. They're not too expensive, but they sure do cause a lot of stress on pet owners and animals. Essentially, everybody hates them is probably the simple way to put that. And so Caravet has developed this product that is a keratin-based product, as sort of the name implied. It also has a pretty strong sort of bittering agent that discourages licking. And in their initial studies, which are not yet published, they've seen about an 85% reduction in licking behavior in both dogs and cats, as well as reduction in edema and inflammation. We're sort of waiting on some final histology on some of these sites to get those publications out. And those studies were done on surgical wounds as opposed to other type of wounds and other types of skin problems, but that's going to kind of be in the future. And so this is a clear product that's currently available for purchase, but some of those studies are still kind of in the works and coming soon. But that's why I'm excited. Right. And last but not least is paw print oxygen, which when I first found out about this, I was like, this is such an obvious invention. Like, I can't believe this isn't already like a thing. And everybody knows that oxygen is a very well understood and established medicine that lots of our patients can benefit from. But the problem is, outside of a vet hospital, it's kind of hard to get oxygen to pets. Like, clients can't use oxygen cylinders because they're too heavy. They can't transport them because they're a fire hazard, a ballistic hazard if they're in a vehicle, and the makeshift oxygen sort of devices that people sometimes try to rig up, oftentimes don't prevent overheating and CO2 rebreathing. And so what PawPrint has developed are canisters that are at a pressure that can safely be transported and legally be transported. They're kind of, I'll say they're like idiot proof, like in terms of like not having a complicated regulator or flow meter. Like you can give these to a client and not worry they're going to do something really stupid with them. And my simple, in case you don't recognize the movie picture, it's from my favorite movie, Spaceballs, where the planet's running out of air, and so he opens this can of Perrier to breathe some air in the acute sense. And so that's essentially what this is sort of solving for. They actually have also developed a new type of oxygen mask, which is shown here, that's been shown to be better ventilated to prevent overheating and reduce CO2 rebreathing. And so, I think the question is really, who's this for? I saw the comment from Kristen about the use at veg hospitals to transfer patients. Totally makes sense that that's the perfect solution. If you need to put a pet in a car, and they need oxygen, this is kind of what you have, right? It's sort of a perfect solution for that problem. If you were a mobile vet or a palliative care vet, having something like this would be great. And then I just think if you have a patient that needs supplementary oxygen because they or might need supplementary oxygen because they're a dog with congestive heart failure or laryngeal paralysis or brachycephalic syndrome, or like any of those things that that could end up in sort of a respiratory crisis, just having people have this at home, and you can prescribe it to them through PawPrint, is just seems like such an obvious and easy solution, and something that didn't exist until relatively recently, and I think a lot of people still don't really know about. So I wanted to share that with you as well. Any
Is
questions
there a
about?
model to have the veterinarian stock this and send it home, or to drop ship it directly to the client?
They do both. So for if you were an urgent care clinic or a clinic like Veg that has to transport patients, you're going to want to stock bottles to send with patients. But if you were, say, a cardiologist that you wanted to be able to give this to clients that had pets that had congestive heart failure, you could just prescribe it to them and they'll ship it to them directly.
And I would imagine that you can turn it on and turn it off through the flow meter, and
Yep,
so
you pop that flow meter on and off. It's a simple little screw on, screw off.
do you happen to know how long one canister would last, say at half a liter a minute?
I want to say that at a half liter a minute, I'm probably going to get this wrong, that it's close to 60 to 90 minutes. And I think the higher flow rate of 2 liters is more like 15 minutes or something like that. I'm sure that math didn't quite work out. But I think that's
Ira, it actually has it on the side of the canister, how many liters per minute equals how many minutes, so that you can try to gauge what you've got in the can, basically, for the rate that you need.
And they do typically they sell them in these kits. So you have, and they have kind of like the big dog kit that has more canisters and bigger canisters and a higher flow rate. And then, the cat and small dog that has a lower flow rate and doesn't require as many or smaller canisters.
Thank you.
Great question. That's my list. I threw on websites for all these companies in case any of you want to look into them further, and I'm happy to try to seek out answers to a couple of those questions. I'll see if I can get an answer about the price model and the price for HT Vet, which was a question. I can find you the information on PawPrint oxygen and how long those canisters last. I don't remember if there are any other sort of deeper questions that need to be tackled, but happy to do so.
This was fantastic. What was the motivation for putting this together?
Somebody asked me.
Daniel.
Yeah, we hold these every month. I kind of our team just finds the most interesting people we can to talk about the most interesting subjects around veterinary technology and animal health that we can. We originally came up with this idea with someone in this room, Mark Massaro, who was there with us.
It was your idea.
It was for the first 2 or 3, Mark, you led this thing and made it what it was, which is a peer discussion. And so the motivation is just to get people talking about their passion topics and to share ideas, to meet new people. And I mean, in that, and so I hope that this was able to achieve that. But I know that there's tons more we could talk about. We have about 7 minutes left. And so I would be happy to just have a free talk for the rest of the time. I know Mark had texted me earlier talking about AI scribes, which are a huge thing in veterinary technology right now. So if you want to, chat about that, Mark. In the meantime,
Yeah, I was thinking about bringing it up. First of all, Ira, this was amazing. I'm not surprised at all, but I didn't know you were doing this. I just like clicked the link that Daniel sent me and I was like, yeah, I'll come to this. I'm working from home. Yeah, no, this presentation was fantastic. It's funny because this is like, some of them were more medically focused where it was, like an injection you give a cat for, stomatitis and things. Whereas, of course, I am always just software based. So when I saw the title, I was like, oh, I bet he's going to talk about AI scribes, because that has been the only thing that has been on my feed recently. I just counted, I sent Daniel a screenshot. Actually, I could even, did you have screen sharing allowed for participants?
Yeah, let's do that real quick. Let's get you.
I can just show you my list that I've collected. I think I'm at 12 now, which is like crazy.
Yeah, try and share. I like that little.
And these are only veterinary companies. Like, so I'm not even including which one is which? Desktop. Okay, desktop 1. There we go. So this is not even including like the ones that they're making them for human medicine now. But so you guys can see my list now. Scribe Note, Lindy, Happy Dog, Vet Soap, Scribble Vet, Barky, Talkatoo, Scribe America, Vet Scribe, Digitail, Freed, VetRec. I think Freed is kind of both human and veterinary. And so the idea, VetRec is the only one, this one I literally saw today. They're the only one who's used my slogan that I keep saying, which is ChatGPT for vets, ChatGPT for vets. But the idea is, we'll just click on them because I literally just saw them today. That you turn on the record button in the exam room. It listens to you talk to the owner, and then it takes the entire conversation. You can either do it that way, or you can come out of the room and just talk to your phone. But it takes the entire conversation. It takes out small talk. And it puts it into a SOAP, and you copy paste your SOAP into the program. So theoretically, is saving tons and tons of times writing medical records. And also, one of my clinics right now has a scribe who goes into we are paying someone to go into the room to just type what people are saying. So this, is AI going to take our jobs? AI is taking our jobs. So I've demoed a half a dozen of these companies. The one that I've been working with most closely is HappyDoc, because I have found that these companies are very resistant to do PIMS integrations, especially with my PIMS for my hospitals, which is EasyVet, because IDEX is really not good about opening their API and doing integrations, doing software talk. But so HappyDoc was really one of the only ones that I found that's willing to do an integration with EasyVet, or their version of one, through like a Chrome extension. And I'm super impressed with what they've built and are building. But I know lots of hospitals already, because I've been demoing these, are using these just with the copy paste without an integration, and it's saving them tons of time. They're anywhere between $50 and $250 per vet per month, which I was like, oh my God, $250 per vet per month for 40 veterinarians. I'm going to pay them $10,000. Like, this is crazy. But the idea is, if I can schedule 1 or 2 more appointments a day or a week, it pays for itself type of thing, which I actually do buy. So I think you said Scribe Note CEO is going to do one of these talks. So I'm sure you could do an entire hour on just AI scribes or vet dictation software, or whatever you want to call it. But this is a really interesting area that I've been delving into.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, I sort of avoided it, not because I don't think it's cool. I think it's extremely interesting, but like I just don't know where to start in terms of like how should you be looking at all these options and deciding which one's right for you. I guess, maybe the ones that integrate with the systems that you use is probably important, but like nobody wants to try out 10 different ones. Like they maybe want to look at
Yeah,
one,
so
two.
my take on that is they're all the same, right? It's like everybody will tell you that theirs is the best and it's way better than everybody else's, but it's all ChatGPT, right? It's all the same thing. So it really is like what works for your, the pricing model, because one of the companies told me the reason, and they not just tell me, they told everyone, they published this publicly. The reason we do not integrate with your PIMS and we will never integrate with your PIMS is because we want to keep our costs low. That company is the most expensive scribe I've seen on the market. So that doesn't really make any sense. But so I would go off cost. I would go off, are they willing to integrate with my PIMS? And then also just the customization of it, right? So some of these companies are letting you customize your soap template. So it's not just a soap, it's Dr. Mark's soap. And it has my history written the way I want my histories written, and my physical exam with my normals. And like, so that's kind of neat. And if I can get that for the same price or less than one who's not doing those things, then I'm going to choose that one. So, but no, you're right. To actual make an informed decision, you'd have to demo a dozen. And I would bet my life savings in 6 months, you'd have to demo 2 dozen. That's the rate that this is going. So it's tough.
I'll share like a similar, very similar type of technology that as a specialist, I think is pretty cool sounding, which is comes from a company called Transfer, Transfur, and they will look at hundreds of pages of medical notes from providers that are referring you a case, and basically create a summary, and bring all the blood work together and kind of do all that stuff that I used to pay somebody to do by hand for me, which I think is kind of similar use of kind of processing all this language and outputting something summarized. So yeah, I think there's gonna be a lot of cool stuff.
Okay, well, with that, I think we're at time now. I put some links into the chat so we can all stay connected. Ira's LinkedIn is on there. We have Celeras's LinkedIn and my personal LinkedIn, but I want to extend a big thank you to everyone who joined. And I know we had a few people in and out. So yeah, just I really appreciate this. We're going to be sending some notes after this. And once again, you can find the replay on our website. So let me put that link in for you again. It's at celerasdigital.com/webinars. And we have our next guest in the room today, who is Emmett. And so we'll be talking about inventory. I'm excited for that, Emmett. It's good to see you here.
Appreciate it. Yeah, looking forward to it. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I hope to see some repeat visitors in here. Thank you for the great conversation, and thank you, Dr. Gordon.
Yeah.
It was really wonderful. I'm extremely impressed with you guys.
Awesome.
It's great. It's great to meet you all.